Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Show on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Pellavita. I'll be your moderator for today's show. In today's show, we're going to discuss the media and violence. What sort of contribution does the media have to this violence that we're experiencing in the United States? With that, we're going to bring in one of our commentators for today's show from Los Angeles, the former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live, Rick Rosner. Rick, welcome to the Media Show. We'll bring in others later on, but what are your thoughts about this media and what sort of contributions does the media have to this violent culture that we're seeing?
One thing we see is the media can only focus on a couple things at a time. It's highly distractible and highly dependent on what they think will get the most eyeballs. So over the past month, we've seen weeks of coverage of Biden's age, and then we started to see a shift of people got annoyed with that after a while, and it shifted to looking at Project 2025, which is the Heritage Foundation's 940-page conservative wish list of what they'd like to do if Trump gets reelected. Of course, they're limited because they need to have super majorities across all areas of government. And then that's all been tossed out now, and it's all been assassination attempt, 24/7 since that happened.
Yeah. Well, but how much does the media contribute to this? If you notice that all the rhetoric that's going on from the parties, like this person's Hitler, this person, they demonize both sides of the aisle. How much does the media have responsibility for that?
There's a ton of money in pushing division. Fox News is not the most even-handed network, and they get more than $2 per cable subscriber per month. They make a ton of money, and it comes from your cable bill. It doesn't come from advertisers, so they're hard to dislodge. And they settled an $800 million libel suit, and they've got one for even more that's working its way through the courts, and it hasn't changed their behavior one bit. And ditto, but to a lesser extent, for the liberal news channels. There's just a lot of eyeballs in anger viewing, in division, and getting people to come together is more boring and less newsy.
Okay, so the thing is, what the media actually supports the division and the hatred language that comes out. But also, isn't it also?
I mean, it's I don't know if it's primarily the media's fault. I mean, social media, like Elon Musk, is kind of a lunatic, and since he bought Twitter a couple of years ago, it's just turned into a swamp of. Twitter used to be fun, and I used to follow hundreds of comedians and read hundreds of jokes a day. They're all gone. They've all been chased. They've all quite reasonably decided that they need to go somewhere else, that it's not worth wasting their effort in this swamp of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate and misinformation. So Twitter's maybe what used to be the best for current events is now not good at all. And Facebook, we know, has been co-opted from time to time, maybe all the time, by people and entities, countries like Russia with a political agenda.
Yeah, but doesn't the media just support violent porn? If you look at it, in other words, throughout the entire media, if you look what happens, and I'm not just talking about social media, I'm also talking about video game media. In other words, it's always somebody getting shot, video games, somebody getting killed. World of Warcraft. I don't even play these games. I've seen my grandkids.
Me either. So yeah, I'm not the person.
I'm not really good to talk about these video games that are out there. But the thing is, from what I've seen, that we are supporting a culture of, violent people. I mean, that's basically.
So maybe video games, encourage a certain type of criminal, and it's not the guy out there with a pistol. It might be the mass shooter.
Rick, you
Yeah,
live
yeah,
in
but we just have in the United States violent porn. I mean, the thing is, and
with
it's piled up on every movie that's out there. In other
Well,
words,
I
somebody
mean, yeah, you got movies
took a bunch of people.
like the John Wick movies. If you count up if you do a body count for
Yeah.
John Wick, it's hundreds of people slaughtered in each
But
installment.
Rick and
Right.
Nick, this is nothing new. I mean, if you look at the body count on the Freddy Krueger movies, which were a long time ago, or even Chucky, or a number of those other movies,
Or
and
Chucky,
I
yeah.
am a fan of it just because I like some of the characters of some of the detective shows, whether that's Criminal Mind or the SUV series, which is all about sexual violence and all along those lines and everything. And yeah, quite a few of them have definitely been graphic. I would argue that sometimes maybe they're a little bit more graphic than they used to be. I mean, I was just watching an episode yesterday where the gentleman was obsessed over his girlfriend who was having a disease that made her have a facial deformity. So he was actually killing and mutilating people in order to give them a similar facial deformity as he was trying to recreate this woman that he loved. And that was on one of the Criminal Mind episodes. And yeah, they showed some of the supposed body parts and all along those lines. So yes, there might be this notion of what people see. So I can't just put it on the video games. It's been out there for a while. Even if you want to go back and watch some of the old episodes of Rockford and some of the old episodes of Knight Rider and a number of other shows, shucks, we can go back to Dragnet when they were having a bunch of shootings and killings and all along those lines. So I don't know that it's necessarily new. It might be more graphic, and maybe it should go.
Okay, all right. For one thing, you've got violent porn here, which is not what we're talking about. Is violence porn. That is gratuitous violence. Violent. Yeah. We're not talking about violent porn. So, and but similarly to porn, there's been this argument about violence that, well, the argument about porn is that happened, before the internet brought 1 billion images to every computer, is in the 70s was like, should we tolerate porn at all? And on one side was the argument that porn is a release, that the sexual tension that men feel, they can relieve it by looking at porn, and we'll have a better society because guys can jerk off.
But Rick,
hold on, let me finish. The other side of the argument was porn encourages sexual acting out by making guys just think of women as sex objects. And you can make a similar argument like, video games are just harmless release and they're fun and, an outlet for some of our violent tendencies. That's one side of the argument. The other argument is the video games acclimate and train people to do actual violence.
But Rick, in that same category and everything, I can tell you that if I was to pick up anybody's phone anywhere, I can probably see that there are several advertisements to get your favorite AI girlfriend and all along those lines. So there's this notion that you don't even need a real one. And I think the real one gives you the true emotions, the true connections, and definitely the true feel and everything. But there's a number of ways that people are being put in this notion that they can just have all of that through AI, because I mean there are tons of them that are being advertised on a regular basis. You can even sometimes see the advertisements in more mainstream media, but they are definitely advertised all over your phone.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because there are two trends that are quite similar. People are having less sex and making fewer babies, and violent crime in the U.S., even though, as Shaq will tell you, it's higher than in Australia and a lot of other Western countries, it's at a 30-year low. It peaked in the early 90s, and it's been declining since. And you could argue what you were just talking about, that people are having less real sex, less real violence, because fake girlfriends, video game violence, we're all staying home and experiencing life vicariously.
But in that same space and everything, when you're doing it vicariously and everything, because one thing that happens in the video games that doesn't necessarily happen in real life is you can you can be like a cat. You can die multiple times. As a matter of fact, what the rumor is with cats is that they have 9 lives, but in video games, you could die 1,000 deaths, if not 1,000,000 deaths, and keep coming back. We know that that's not the reality, because once you have been shot and killed, you are gone.
So we probably have, half a dozen spectacular, horrible, mass shootings in America every year, where somebody takes out 12 or more people with an AR-15 type gun. And in a lot of those, you get the idea that, yes, somebody wanted to go out in a video game style blaze of glory. But if you look at most violence, gun violence, it's not that. We have 100 deaths on average per day in America. 50 of them are suicides. 50 of them are homicides or accidents. And, so the suicides are largely, just people feel bad for whatever reason, put a pistol to their head and end it.
But
can I just point out, sorry, I'll just point out a couple of things. So one, the stuff you're talking about, porn, again, if it's on the internet, we all get to see the same stuff. With videos, Squid Games, I think, is the most popular, most watched things, the thing that Netflix ever brought out. We've gone from Quentin Tarantino to Saw to Squid Games, which I think is gratuitous, and it's kind of funny because you don't really believe it. But even if you take guns out of the equation, the United States still remains significantly more violent than anywhere else. You had the is it Walkachaw, the Christmas parade where the Darrell Brooks ran over 6 people, were killed, and one of them was a little child, and then 30 or 40 people were injured, that sort of stuff. Even incidents like that, I think there was another one in Times Square. Things like that don't happen with the same frequency and with the same death rate, in other parts of the world. So I'm not sure exactly what the issue is, but when Americans point to these things as being the reasons, all your peer group has the same exposure.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Is so the thing is, how much does our media contribute to this? If you look at, people tend to model after what they see, okay? And we're talking about people, not the brightest thing in the world. They're not the Rick Rosmers of the world. They're just normal people. And if what they're seeing daily is violence, people getting shot, people getting killed, then they go to the video games, people shot, people getting killed. Violent porn is everywhere in the United States. So if you're modeling after what you're seeing, and you're seeing it all the time. So why don't we have a conversation about maybe we need to turn the temperature down a little bit? If you look at it from porn, let's just get rid of violent porn, just regular porn. Worst case scenario, somebody makes a kid. Am I missing something? In other words, that's it. All right. Now let's look at porn. Violent porn. Worst case scenario, somebody gets killed, or a lot of people get killed, or there's a mass killing. And for some reason, let's turn off the porn and let's turn on John Wick, and that's good for somebody to consume. I
think when it comes to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, I don't think that was because of violent movies. I think the big part of that is because of the level of division in mainstream media. And if you tell, this kid is 20, which implies that he was around 12 when Donald Trump became the president the first time. So this kid's grown up through his formative years, hearing on a daily basis that Trump is the Antichrist, he's Satan, he's Hitler, he's, producing Nazis, he's going to end democracy, he's going to end the republic, he's going to become a dictator, etc. He's heard that so many times. Now, whilst I wouldn't believe that, I can tell you that every time I've come to the United States, and every time I've been to the US, there's been a different president. Every time I've come, I've thought, oh my goodness, the US is a lot more violent than what it was before. There's more homeless people in California than what there was before. And yet every time I've come, the place has been pretty much the same as what it was last time I was there. But yet if you listen to American media, you get this very distorted view of what's actually happening in your country. What sort of effect does that have on a young 12-year-old's mind all through his teenage years until he turns 20?
I think you're missing the boat, Shaquille, because here's the reality of this particular individual. He's probably schizophrenic, and people are just denying it. And I'll tell you why. He has all the classic symptoms of being schizophrenic. Number one, he's highly intelligent. He won some math and science tests. Usually, as you get higher IQs, you actually have higher mental problems. Okay, and schizophrenics don't view the world the way normal people do. Yet today, even today, nobody in media, and he's 20-year-old living with his parents. His parents are both behavioral therapists. I mean, he's showing all the classic signs of being delusional. And so, sure, certainly, that's probably what's going on. You have a schizophrenic child who's living with his parents, who is delusional, and he picks up a gun and shoots. It has nothing to do with reality whatsoever. And so anybody who thinks this is reality-based is not living in the reality.
Running through his mind, because what would be typical in his age group is to do a mass shooting or a school killing, stuff like that.
You're being rational. Please
not to take out a president.
No, you're being rational. Schizophrenics aren't rational. Go on.
So Shaq touched on a point where America has 1/3 billion people, 10 times, I think, the population of Australia. So,
14 times.
What's that?
14, I think, because we're at 25
14
million.
times. So if you're just going to go off, like I get pissed at the local news because they show, 8 million people in the LA area, and they show murder here, robbery here. It's like, this isn't news. These are things that are going to happen when you have 8 million people. And so, like, if you go on a crime by crime reporting basis of America looks like, just a hellscape. But a lot of it is because we have a huge population, 5.5 times the population of every European country.
Yeah, but Rick, if you translate to per 100,000, Morocco is 4 times safer, and Spain is like 10 times safer. So even though you have a bigger population, it doesn't matter. The United States is not safe relative to Morocco or even Spain.
So just to go back to the media for a moment, though, if you were to have a media network, and Paul Sladkus sometimes makes appearances on here, and he runs a media company which talks about only good news, right?
Yeah,
people don't want to watch it. People don't want to watch that. You sit there and go, hey, this child, achieved this thing, and this person did that. Yeah, nobody's going to watch that. They don't care. Yeah, if it what's the saying that you actually want me to say, Nick?
Well,
if it leaves, it leaves.
Sad part about America. Go on, Rick.
So I'm looking at a list of crime rates by country. And out of 200 countries in the world, on this one list, and everybody calculates it different, the U.S. is the 59th most violent country. And then if you look at its pals, the countries that are next to it, you got Belgium, Ethiopia, Malaysia, Sweden, New Zealand, the UK. That we're not that unusual in our crime rate.
Yeah, but you say crime rate, and I've heard that mentioned by some other people. Crime rate can differ between violent crime and nonviolent crime. For example,
then let's look at homicide rate.
You got to look at homicide.
All right, so homicide rate, Canada, 1.76 per 100,000. The U.S. about 4.7 something. Mexico. 20 point something.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the Americas. The Americas are the most dangerous countries out there. So forget Mexico, forget the Caribbean, forget South America. Those countries are all worse than the United States. I got that. Compare the United States with a first-rate country, a European country, any country in Europe, and then go check those demographics. That's the problem. In other words, if you're saying, hey, America's safer than the Bahamas, of course. The Bahamas is awful. Or any of the Caribbean. The Caribbean has a huge per 100,000 crime rate, and so does Latin America. But then you go to Europe, and that isn't the case. Then America is way, way down there.
So Mark's got a video there, if you can perhaps bring it up on the screen, that also shows the murder rates by race by a group called the Dart Boy. And I think that is very telling as well, because clearly there is a problem with some parts of your society being underprivileged and certainly disproportionately living in poverty. How much of an effect does that have? I've just dropped it into the chat if you don't have it.
I see it. I'm glad to put it up on the chat because you
Yeah.
actually said it.
And the thing is, see, this is a problem also. Everything run in the United States runs to race. I mean,
Well, you know that if there's anyone who doesn't talk about it, but this
convenient that the person who sat up on there happened to be some young white guy who's schizophrenic, and we're not going to address the mental health challenges that this person has.
But the majority of mass shooters are white men.
Yeah,
look at that one that happened in Vegas, for example.
But isn't it irrelevant to somebody who's dying? It's the United States. You guys are.
It's irrelevant to the person who died, absolutely, but it's relevant to how you deal with the causal issues.
And there's actually been some shocking facts in that regards as well.
Okay, well, Native, is that Native Americans like?
That's
But no,
Native
this
American.
is actually a video, so Mike, you'll have to share your
Where's the white Americans? Do we have
I did share the screen. That's the screen being shared.
Yeah, he's sharing the screen right now. U.S. murder rate by race.
I think you got to scroll down a little bit on the right hand, like on the left hand side, in order to bring up. There you go.
There's white and there's Asian. Okay, rates per 100,000. So the black community is getting it quite a bit. Then Native Americans, then white, then Asians. What about Hispanics? Why aren't they up there?
I mean, part of that has to do with law enforcement and also the way of the crime system.
Mark, what happened to Hispanics?
They can be put out there and everything.
Here comes the Hawaiians. There we go. Good.
But there's a number of things, and there's definitely some societal factors that can be put out there as well, and there are a number of them that can go out there. And I was actually trying to look up because I think I've heard that there are some European countries that have some decent amount of crime. I don't know enough about Spain where you're moving to.
Are these blacks?
I want to say that France has got some decent amount.
So
these are the American rates of murder by race.
Okay, because if you're looking at Morocco, it is way down there. It's not even close to this.
All right, so I can throw a bunch of numbers out. So the U.S. homicide rate, 5 people per 100,000. Spain, 0.62, about 1/8 the U.S. rate.
So, sorry, did you just say that the U.S. rate was 5 per 100,000? That's not correct.
No, 5 per 100,000.
5 per 100,000.
It's way higher than 5 per 100,000. It's way higher than that.
The U.S. homicide rate?
No,
yeah.
According to this highly reliable source I'm looking at called Data Pandas. As you know, pandas are really good at math. Anyway, I'm just going off of this. I can find other sources. But anyway, Australia, 0.9 per 100,000, less than 1/5. New Zealand, 1/6 the U.S. rate. China, 1/9 the U.S. rate.
And the U.S. is right, 5 per 100,000, and Spain is 0.6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I thought it was a lot higher than 5 per 100,000, but okay.
I mean, some of these numbers that I'm seeing are actually quite scary, even when we're looking at violent crime, and given that it is probably very high in the U.S. and everything. But I'm looking at
just at the rate that we've got on the screen.
In South Africa,
the rate we've got on the screen at the moment is higher than that. Like, for example, at the moment, the black rate is 30 per 100,000. Natives are 9.9, Hawaiians 6.6, whites 4, and Asians 1.5. So how is it that the total is 5 per 100,000 if these rates combined add up to about 40?
One thing,
the average.
Black people are only 12 or 13% of the population.
Yeah, they're 12%, 13%.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I stand corrected. So per 100,000 people off that rate. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yep.
So it's kind of interesting to see how high the black community is.
But I mean, you can talk about like the history of black people in America, where I just saw a statistic. The average white household in America has a net worth of $1.3 million. The average black household, $220,000. So the average white family has 6 times the assets of the average black family.
And those part of the economic things that are going on there. I was actually looking up a different because they said that the large number of rapes and that's rapes around the country go unreported and everything. And apparently South Africa is estimated to have almost 500,000 per year. So 500,000 per year. They're saying Egypt has 200,000. China and how much of this is actually being reported, because we do know some of these countries underreport their stuff, but they're saying China has 32,000, whereas the UK has 85,000. So those are actually some areas that are definitely high and everything. Apparently in France, their crime rate, because I'm looking at one of the things, it was what they said in 2022 was 0.00, 100% decline from 2021. This is from macro trends, but France crime rate and statistics for 2021 was 1.14, which is a 5.8% increase. So they did have a slight increase.
I think we've finished with this
with the video.
thing. Yeah.
I did have a question for Rick really quickly, since y'all were talking about, because it kind of plays to this notion of violence and portrayal and all along those lines, because y'all were talking about violence and what you're calling violent porn, which is like the gratuitous killings and all along those lines. And you differentiated between violence porn and violent porn, Rick, and everything. But one of the things that I've always been curious about, and it kind of comes to a issue that I know that to some degree Shaquille has done some work in and is passionate about and all along those lines. But how many of the people that are watching the different things that they're watching that is called the movies or porn or whatever names you want to give them and everything are actually paying attention to the age and the performers? Because I would argue that probably quite a few of those people that are portraying themselves as being young are not young. And then, of course, there's a whole subset of that category that is even telling you that they're not young, that they are kids and everything. So I just wonder if that is an issue we need to be
most
as well.
right,
there's a lot of youth that are going off as well in that industry.
So
and being abused.
People don't want to go to jail. So people, I think when guys mostly, look at porn, they want to go to a site that appears to be legitimate and does screening to make sure that the performers are of age. That being said, there are a ton of websites that have teen in their name. That's, certainly, like people like looking at some people like looking at MILFs, women in their 30s, 40s and on. Other people, or maybe some of the same people, like looking at younger people who don't have the wear on them.
But to come back to that earlier gun discussion and everything, how does anybody that's looking at that actually know that the people that they are seeing are actually the age that they are claiming to be? Because I'm thinking that if people are into that lifestyle, that they are probably some people that they are thinking that they're looking at that are college age or above, or at least 21, 22 and above, but they might actually be 16 or 15. And there is not any that I'm aware of. That's part of the issue that North Carolina was having, and part of the reason that they kicked out Pornhub. They wanted to make sure that there was some age verification, both of the participant, but I would also imagine they want age verification of the talent as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, at the beginning of legitimate, safe-ish videos, there's a little disclaimer that says, all performers are of legal age, and if you need to see the records of the performers to confirm this, it gives you an address for the production company. And if you click around in that world, you run into things that maybe don't have this, and you want to back away from that stuff, because I don't know what stays on my computer after I look at it. I'm not technically skilled enough, and I don't want anything like that on my computer.
But you're killed. That's
I think as well, to come back to your previous comments, Rick, I think that what the argument for porn is that it allows men to be able to have fantasies and see them depicted that they actually wouldn't do to their partner. They can see all this gross stuff, or they can fantasize about the cheerleader that they had a crush on back in the day, and they can sort of live that without them treating a person they're with in that kind of way. But I would also say that the porn industry has got a pretty bad reputation for being very exploitative. Mm-hmm. We've seen reports of girls that are first starting out in this industry essentially being pimped out because they're told they're going to a photo shoot or a video shoot, and actually they're just having sex with some dirty old guy. The real problem is the incredible rate of self-harm and suicide that goes on in that industry. I find it very difficult to support anything like that. So,
I think when you consume porn, you're to a certain extent, it's like consuming diamonds, like buying diamonds. It's like you're probably investing in human misery.
Yeah, that's the part. In some ways, you might even be investing in, and I know it's been something because I actually have a couple of friends that have been involved in fighting against it. You might even be inadvertently contributing to sex trafficking and all along those lines, because definitely there's a number of things that are going on, and that is a worldwide problem. I've actually knew a young lady that was one of Sri Srinivasan's friends that was very active in fighting against that, and I think I had her on one of our earlier shows, and I'm trying to think of her name. I know it begins with an S, but it's not coming to me right now, but she's very much active in that fight, because definitely there's been a lot of talks about that, not just here, but around the world in the various continents.
So, but it's a changing industry. In the first half of the 20th century, into the 60s and 70s, the mob controlled porn. And then it was these big porn conglomerates that made, kind of semi-expensive movies with plots in the 80s, and like Boogie Nights kind of presents that world. And now you've got the OnlyFans world, where you have 1.1 million Americans with pages on OnlyFans. So it looks like it's, for a lot of people, it's shifted to the individual small entrepreneur. I don't believe that all 1.1 million people are the old school type exploitative porn situation where there's a biker boyfriend who's pimping out his girlfriend and forcing her to do this stuff.
The internet has democratized, the internet through OnlyFans has democratized porn starlets' access to an audience. Is that essentially what you're saying at the moment?
I'm guessing. When I was a kid, I remember seeing on the streets of New York and on Sunset Boulevard in LA, like just swarms of prostitutes, streetwalkers. And then all that moved inside when the internet came along. Now, does that mean Craigslist used to be a hotbed of that stuff till they cleaned it up. Now, I don't know, does internet prostitution, is it less exploitative of women than, being a streetwalker?
But there's different variations of that, because you can have just about anything in that space. I can tell you for a fact, because I used to look at it just for the fun of it, because I do not travel in those circles and all along those lines. But there was literally, you can have just about any fantasy that you want, you can find on the internet, including in the dating game and everything along those lines. Because I can tell you that if you want a millionaire to be your other half, there was literally a website that still exists.
Yeah, sugar daddy.
Called Mediaa-And You can literally pair yourself with the millionaire that you're looking for and everything. And I'm going like, if I was a millionaire, or even if I traveled with millionaires, I don't know that I would want somebody that was automatically targeting me in that way. But apparently it's a quite popular site, and they even put up nice little profiles about what they're looking for, what planes they want, and a number of other things along those lines. So, Shaquille, there are people out there that are looking for your type, literally on something called MillionaireMatch.com.
There we go.
Say how much I do and don't have, but I'll just say this: one, it's a prenuptial requirement, no matter who, and two, even if you don't sign it, sweetheart, you're not going to be able to get to my assets. I'm very, very well structured. Very good reasons.
Because Taylor Swift would have you sign a prenup, but that's another story.
But you know what? That's actually a very important point. People say that to me. What if I was with somebody who went on to be more successful than me? That's absolutely fine. First of all, the prenuptials that I've already got drafted for whoever that future girl may be is, I think, quite fair and doesn't leave her with nothing. The focus on making sure the kids' lives aren't going to be disrupted in the event that the relationship doesn't work out. But that's the thing. I don't want to take somebody else's success from them. If they've worked really hard at something, that's theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want the same respect back.
Getting back to the main topic of Hollywood's violent porn, we have such a push on your kids can't watch porn. Kids can't watch porn. Oh, but they can consume all the violence that they want. Why?
Well, first of all, does anybody really believe that kids aren't getting access to porn?
No.
Well, you go to the website. Are you over 18?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. But why is it that we continually on our movies, continually Hollywood continues to pump out John Wick style?
Because it's sells.
Because that sales is probably forever. It's been out there. That's what I said.
Because people find it entertaining, and also because
we just said, Mark, they have in Hollywood, they have no morals, they have no ethics. It's all about money.
No, it's about the money, but it's been about the money for a while. Because one of the most popular shows is actually in your era, and I'm not knocking the age because I'm not that far off of it and everything. But how many people got shot and killed on Gunsmoke? I think there was quite a few and everything. So we've been doing that for a while. So there was definitely a number of murders that were going on a regular basis.
But to talk about the morality, let's take a little 16-year-old girl who comes out and sings "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," right? Judy Garland. Hollywood absolutely destroyed that poor girl. She had a life, from all accounts, that was absolutely miserable. Norma Jean had a life that was absolutely miserable, and I can go through and just name so many stars that just had such a horrible thing. In fact, Marilyn Monroe, I think, once said, "Hollywood's a place that'll pay 50 cents for your soul, 50,000 for a smile."
But
so I think we're allowing big media and the big entertainment companies to really shape the thoughts of many people. And that's why I will say, back to the Donald Trump situation, Nick, that very likely he had some sort of mental health issue, but this would have been amplified by the sort of rhetoric that we've been getting out of big media.
Right. Hold on.
I just had another
defender of Hollywood coming on.
I just want to come back. I know you're getting ready to defend Hollywood, but I want to come back to media because we actually just lost somebody that was part of a very popular show and part of her, and she fought a very valiant battle against a very devastating disease for many women and all along those lines. But part of what I have read about her, and I actually think that the show that she's most known for wasn't the one, because if you look at my Facebook, you'll see that I was a fan of as much, but I was a fan of the other show, which I think is underrated. So Shannon Doherty just died after a long battle with breast cancer and everything. But part of what she did is she would always be one of those people that spoke out, would even speak up for what she wanted on set, from what I understand. And I wasn't on those Hollywood sets, but they did say that she spoke up in the way she wanted to be treated and didn't let the folks that were on that network, including Tori Speller's father, kind of like step over her and all along those lines. But definitely, like I said, more of a fan of Charmed than 90210. But I was just wondering y'all's thoughts around this, because she is one of those women that actually was afraid to take on the Hollywood elite, from my understanding. But you would know better than I.
She had a reputation for being a bitch, which was the old school thing. If you spoke up, if you didn't tolerate being treated like crap, you got a bad reputation that she almost certainly didn't deserve.
Right.
But I want to go back to violence in movies. Star Wars was there was 2001 in the 1970, but other than that, Star Wars was in 1977 was the first good-looking science fiction movie that didn't look like absolute cheap crap. And that's why they didn't make much science fiction before Star Wars, because it all looked like shit, and you could only show it to like kids and people who were, would tolerate the crappiness. Now it's all science fiction all the time because we have the technology to make it look good. Ditto for violence. There's a ton of violence in movies and it's juicier. Now when somebody gets hit with a bullet, you see the blood and guts just fly all over the place, because with computer technology, you can make it look really realistic and really horrifying. There's a show called The Boys, which is like, what if all superheroes were just incredible assholes? And that show tries to outdo itself with violence in every episode. And because they can make it look good.
Okay.
Just
And
just
so
say very
that's good
quickly.
for society
So I
because,
grew up on.
go on.
Okay, so I grew up on horror films because I used to just, I don't know why, I just fell in love with horror movies. And I remember there was a video store. It was a big like warehouse looking thing, and you go down there, you get 10 movies out for $10 for 10 days. And we were going in there all the time over the school holidays, being an only child, so we were all Australia. We were going in there, and I'd just go through, and they had this massive collection of horror movies. And when I became an older teenager, I actually really got into the black and white Lost in Space, which I thought was really cool. But I just want to come back to something you said there about the hyper realism of violence and blood and all that sort of stuff. In the Donald Trump situation, there were some reports of people saying, well, we didn't actually know it was gunfire. We thought it might have been firecrackers. We thought it could have been fireworks. We thought it could have been all these other things. And some of the experts weighed in on that and said, well, actually, a lot of the time, especially in mass shootings, people don't know it's gunfire. They assume it's something else because gunfire rarely sounds like gunfire. And I think that movies actually have a big part to play in that, because movies don't accurately depict what's actually happening. Same thing with the gratuitous blood going everywhere. I have seen a lot of real life blood and guts. It doesn't look like the way it looks in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives people a false sense of reality.
But that functions as a tip for when you're out in public, at the grocery or at the mall, in a restaurant, for, given, especially in America, say, versus Spain, you want to have situational awareness. You want to be,
But you can't be aware of everything, Rick. I mean, what are you
No,
going to do
but
every time you hear a
can.
bang, you hit the deck?
right? No, but you can sit facing the entrance in a restaurant with your back to the wall.
Yeah, well, you have to do that in the United States, but given the demographics I've seen in Spain, I don't have to do that in Spain. Okay. So, I mean, this is the reality of living not in the United States. In Australia, as much as you hate your country, Shaquille, you don't have to turn your back every time and watch a gun. You come over here, buddy, there's a lot of places here. You got to watch your back. And if you go
So
to the
we've
Caribbean,
been talking in Australia. There has been some conversation in Australia about having our police officers not carry guns. They can have the guns in the car or something like that, but not actually have them having guns because we're not that violent. In New Zealand, not only do they not have guns unless there's a special situation, not only do they not have guns, a lot of the officers are walking around, don't even have a taser or a baton on them.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Now, in the UK, most of them don't have guns either, except for around Parliament House and, some of the hyper tourist areas. Most of them don't have guns. And actually, a lot of places in Europe, they don't even carry guns with them. Again, they've got them if they need them, but they don't just have them, holstered to them at all times.
In Barcelona, I'm wearing my Barcelona shirt today. See, I'm wearing it so that when I go to Barcelona, they won't think I'm a tourist because I like their soccer team. And they won't shoot me with their water pistols, because that's what
I promise you, Nick. I promise you, Nick. There's nothing you're going to be able to do for them not to pick up that you're a terrorist.
my 23rd great grandfather was the Count of Barcelona. Please.
So you said you can't be aware of everything, Shaq, but I mean, there are other things that I have to be aware of because I'm 64 now. I have to look out where I'm placing my feet because I fell off a curb and cracked my wrist. I'm in the age now that I have to have curb awareness because falling could be bad. I have to have scam awareness. Like older people, can get scammed via technology.
Yep.
Yeah, but trying to be on the lookout for a potential sniper or for a potential mass shooting. Not everybody can go and have their back against the wall when they're sitting in a restaurant. So, I think it's very hard to be aware of everything. And I think that if you attempt to do that, you'd just be so stressed out. I think, unfortunately, although this might sound like a promotion of apathy, unfortunately, you have to accept that despite your best efforts, if you're unfortunate and your time is up, your time is up.
True, but I put on a seatbelt when I'm in a car, and I'm aware of, like that
You play the
other
odds.
drivers are really crappy right now, and that anybody can do anything in a car in front of me at any time, or a pedestrian.
Bill, you know better. You play the odds. Okay, in other words, it's all a math game. And you're playing the odds, so you're trying to put the odds in your favor everywhere you go. I mean, it's like business. You're playing the odds. You bet on the horses.
The point that I'm making is
buy the Greyhound is faster. But
the point I'm making is, if you let yourself get too stressed out about that, you'll end up becoming is agoraphobic. Is that the word? Agoraphobic, where you won't leave your house.
Afraid of wide open spaces. But that's why it's good to be. It's good to know math and statistics, so you can reasonably evaluate. What is it worth worrying about, and what can you just be like, okay.
So statistically speaking, Donald Trump should actually get rid of his Secret Service altogether, because statistically speaking, being assassinated at the age of 78 is not very high up on the things that happen to 78-year-olds.
you know what? He probably should have a private service, because he can afford it, that may do a better job than the Secret Service, or at least blend them together.
Well, I was under the impression that the Secret Service was actually. I was under the impression that they were contractors. Some of the team were contractors, not paid for by him, but paid for by the state. But I was under the impression also that the government had, or that they had been denied extra security. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's sort of what we're being told. If I had his sort of money and I was trying to run in a position, knowing how contentious a person he is, I would have security everywhere. But having said that, imagine how much this has changed history. Because if you change something and that kid never got on that roof, this wouldn't even be a story.
That's true. Yeah, right.
I mean, the last president who was shot was Reagan in 1981, 43 years ago. We have no idea about the thousands of threats against presidents and other officials, that were stopped and we never heard about.
Right.
So there is actually a show called, I forgot what it's called now. I think it's called Close Calls or something like that. And it's the FBI and CIA and all that actually talk about some of the things that almost happened that they stopped. But you're absolutely right. Nobody's going to sit there and say, oh, we could have had this devastating thing called 9/11, but they stopped it. Because it's very, very hard to point at what didn't happen. But you can look at what did happen, and that becomes a much bigger story.
But that underlines what the problem is. 9/11, one of the main problems that let 9/11 happen was no interagency cooperation. The FBI and the CIA and local police, they didn't listen to each other. They were jealously guarded their territory. And in this Trump thing, it was, I think, a local guy, not a Secret Service guy, who got on the roof. The guy starts turning a rifle to him. He ducks down, and then I assume pops back up. But the snipers eventually. It was 42 seconds I read between the first shots from the lunatic and the Secret Service saying shoot her down, which is pretty good.
You'd have to feel for those two parents too. At the end of the day, I'm not. A lot of people say, "Well, he's dead. Who cares?" I don't know this kid. None of us do. We don't know what was happening in his mind. But there's a mother and a father there that just lost a 20-year-old kid, and under circumstances that they're going to have to live with for the rest of their life. I mean, they're going to be probably ostracized from their community as a result of what's happened, and they may well have done nothing wrong. It may just be one of those things that have happened. And
they were both behavioral therapists.
Well,
but you know what? Sigmund Freud didn't do a particularly good job with his kids, did they? So I mean, you made a lot of psychologists kids that just never.
Rick, they may have known that their son had problems, mental problems, but just because they have problems they don't know the extent of the problem. It's kind of difficult to discern.
Well, and how would you predict that? Like, okay, my son's a little bit troubled. You're not going to predict he's going to go and try and assassinate a president.
Yeah, that's
And
right. That's what I'm saying. So it was probably a big leap for them. But again, now you have damages all over the place. And that's the reason I'm for gun insurance, because somebody's got to clean up the mess. That's what lawyers do. We clean up the mess after everybody else creates it. That's what insurance companies do. They clean up the mess. And we've got a mess.
Maybe it'd be more effective, Nick, if you actually charged an insurance tax on bullets, right? So you charge an upfront insurance thing on the purchase of a gun,
right?
But then you charge insurance on the bullets, or some sort of tax on the bullets, because you wouldn't have to charge that much.
No,
a few cents a bullet or something would be, would be enough to have a
But
kitty
right
dance.
right now, Shaquille, there's no coverage. In other words, some GoFundMe took care of this kid, fine. But as Rick said, 100 people will die today of suicide and of also just gunshots. And there's nothing covering those 100 people. There will be no crowdfunding. What will happen? There'll be widows. There'll be crying children. There'll be people that the news isn't going to pick up because, frankly, the news doesn't care. So some guy got killed in the inner city somewhere, and they left 2 or 3 kids. No one cares. And so what happens?
So Nick, not to play the devil's advocate, because I actually like what you're suggesting. And hey, maybe I'll go and set the insurance company up. But I do want to. I can see an opportunity, but I do want to actually just make this point though, just as a sort of devil's advocate counter to your point. One of the complaints that people have with life insurance is that it becomes a motive, something that gives people a motive to kill their partners. Right. So is there then a perverse incentive where, somebody might say, hey, I'll get my friend to shoot my wife because I'm going to get this insurance money?
That does happen. And that happens in the life industry. It's rare, but it does happen. The life insurance industry is very guarded against that. And they actually force people to go through financial underwriting today, as well as health underwriting. The reason they do financial underwriting, they make sure that you're not going out to kill yourself. Like I have what I call it, a 7-figure plus policy on my life, and I had to go through financial underwriting because I want my wife to kill me to go collect a big check.
So Rick will probably attest to this, coming from some media background. A lot of artists and actors as well, but not singers as well, is written into their contracts that the production company or whatever company's behind them can have up to 10 times life insurance worth 10 times what their contract is worth. And then they have like a death clause that says that because most of these singers actually make a substantial amount more money after they die than what they did when they were alive. And one example of this actually is Michael Jackson. He was $500 million in debt. After he died, his estate earned $2.5 billion. And that's very common, not at those numbers, but it's very common across the
a lot of employers will take out life insurance on their employees.
That's right. Yeah, they have corporate-owned life insurance, key man insurance. I mean that's just not uncommon. But see, like in this particular case, this fire chief, he may not have any insurance. It's quite possible. Those 100 people that are committing suicide and dying, they could have no life insurance. Yet they may have kids, they may have spouses, etc. And even if
they've got life insurance, isn't suicide an exclusion from life insurance anyway?
Usually, if you commit suicide within 2 years, there's an exclusion on the policy. So suicide is not.
So if you're depressed and you're only 18 months in,
after 2 years, they actually do cover suicide. But see, on gun insurance.
So if you're depressed and you're 18 months in, just stay depressed for 7 months and you'll be okay. Is that how this works?
Well, if you want to commit suicide, you got to buy the policy now, wait for 2 years, then go ahead and commit suicide. You'll collect.
I suspect that there have been hundreds, maybe even thousands of cases of murder and or attempted murder by COVID. I feel like
it could be true. Yeah,
somebody's in their 40s. There's a couple in their 40s, and grandma is in her early 80s, and she's got a ton of money, but she doesn't seem to be dying soon. So the couple thinks in their 40s, like, we'll get COVID, we'll probably be okay, and we'll give it to our mom. I can imagine that happened not a lot, but some.
Given millions of people in this world,
Rick,
that probably
Rick,
did
I'm
happen.
gonna call you next week. I reckon we could write like a little, straight to TV movie with that as the plot. I love it.
Yeah.
Or
Okay,
somebody,
sure.
but probably a true story somewhere too. With
And when I say
people.
we, Rick, what I mean is you and I just get the plot lines out, stick it in Chat GPT, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna push my gun insurance agenda, and in this way, I'll get to head an insurance company that sells gun insurance to people that own guns to cover things like this and those 100. You have to think of it from an insurance company standpoint. Every day they're going to have 100 claims. Shaquille, that's not fun for an insurance company. They
It's
don't
been
like
beautiful for an insurance company because look at how much money they'd be bringing in.
Yeah,
And then with
what
all
they
that
wanna do.
money,
But
they'll
the
get
insurance
support
industry
from both
works one
sides.
way. They want to
They'll
bring
get
the money
support from
in,
both
but they
sides.
don't
The
want to pay it
Democrats
out.
would love them. The Democrats would love them because they're tackling the issue and it's in their financial interest to reduce gun crimes. The NRA and the Republicans will love them because they'll lobby the hell out of them. It's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and-
the
and-
insurance
and
company don't want to pay
insurance-
for it.
Insurance is a bad investment, but it's good for peace of mind. My wife thought we weren't adequately insured, so she bought us $1 million umbrella policy for anything that any of our other insurance
Right.
didn't cover
That's it.
for $600 a year.
Yeah.
$600 is nothing for
Nothing.
peace of mind, even though the insurance company, I'm sure their actual costs in paying stuff out, probably $250 a year on
You're
average.
correct. You're correct. And by the way, here there was something in the Wall Street Journal, in case you guys don't know, title insurance. They finally brought it out. If you buy real estate here in the U.S., you pay for a title policy.
To
Okay.
to protect you from squatters.
No, not to protect you from squatters, to make sure that the person who owned the property really is the owner, and the person that owned the property before that owned the property. So you buy this fictitious title insurance. 97% of the money will go to the writing agent and all the people working there. Only 3% will go to claims. Yes, title insurance. In other words, title insurance doesn't pay. And see, that's what the insurance company likes. Collect premiums, deny, delay, don't pay claims. So we'll have to discuss that later on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Well, I thank everybody for coming to the media show, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.